Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My goodness me, we're back. We're back live on Hands-on SAP Dev. It's me, DJ Q Macro. Thank you so much for joining. Good morning to Mark. Good morning, Nabheet, Srikanth. Great to see you all here, and I've got some other viewers as well. Come say hello on the chat there, if you can. Good morning, Ronnie. Great to see you as well. This is fantastic. I've been away for about a month. And it's just been a busy month. I've been in different places. I'm looking at my video. I should be looking at the video camera here. Been in different places. Doing some code jams I'm looking at my calendar now in Utrecht and Mechelen and Athens as well. A double code jam in Athens. I've been on holiday as well, and I've got there's some stuff going on family-wise as well, which I'll maybe talk about another time. It's really nice to be back. I've had a break, and I feel as though what we should be doing, which is the reason why I titled this particular episode the way I did, that it would be nice to sort of get gently back into the swing of things. So a bit of stretching, a bit of brain stretching, and just catching up with where we left off. So that's what we're going to do. Good morning, hey Volker, good morning, Manlobe, good morning, Robert, good morning, Amit, good morning. My goodness me, it's great to see you all here. I'm looking down here on my chat. It's great to see you. Nice work yesterday. Was it yesterday? I was, again, from the family issues, I was away. I've been away quite a bit this week. Volker, thanks for looking into that CDS thing. Maybe we can have a chat about that, and you can explain to the folks on the channel as well about the difference between and the relationship between associations and compositions, which is great. I've got my SAP Coffee Corner mug here as usual, but I've drunk most of the coffee anyway. I've got a new coffee machine. I think some have already seen that, and I'm already caffeinated to the eyeballs. I'm looking down at my keyboard, my 60% and Pro 2, and I'm halfway through changing the keycaps yet again. I got a nice set of keycap. What's going on? Nice set of keycaps. There's the blue stuff. I've not changed the grey yet, but I will do. But yeah, I'm loving this keyboard. Absolutely loving this keyboard. I know that. Who's got one of the Amp Pro 2? Anyway, there's some conversation about the Amp Pro 2 keyboard. Yes, thank you. Thumbs up, definitely, Volker. What else? Oh, yes. So a nice tweet from Srikanth. I think it was yesterday, your first tweet, Srikanth, about the UI5Con in Bangalore, which by all accounts was amazing. Sorry I couldn't make that. I couldn't make the UI5Con in St. Leon-Hort either because, again, the family issues. But that was also amazing, including your session, Volker, I hear. And Srikanth, you said something about the fact that you were pleasantly surprised that your knowledge had grown, and so you could hit the ground running with the sessions at UI5Con in Bangalore, partly due to all the sharing and learning that everybody here does with each other. And you said something this morning about you've used the terminal, the CLI, more often in the last 4 weeks or something in the last year. So, in your honour, I am wearing my new t-shirt for the first time, which is, the future is terminal. So, I thought I'd wear that just for this live stream. So, in your honour, Srikanth. So anyway, what we're going to do today is just catch up with each other and limber up a little bit with a tiny bit of JavaScript. Again, in the similar way to what we did in episode 0, which was to solve an Advent of Code challenge. We're not going to do anything as large or as long as that. I don't want to take the whole stream to do that. But we'll do a really small problem just to sort of get us back into the practice of things and And I would love for you to contribute as well by chatting and making suggestions or asking questions. What I want to do is introduce us to Ramda. I think if you've heard of Ramda before, then let me know on the live stream. I'll explain what Ramda is shortly, but we'll use that to solve this really simple. It's sort of school child simple, almost little challenge on Project Euler, but it doesn't really matter how simple it is. It just allows us to think about how we're expressing our solution a little bit more, and then we'll catch up with CAP and with the latest version of CAP, and we'll look into. In fact, I fired up a new CAP project. I initiated a new CAP project yesterday to have a look. 3.13.0. I think the new version is from 3.10, wasn't it, Volker? And there's some new features that look quite interesting, so we'll look at that. And I did say we'd start to take a look at authorisations. So I've got some information about authorisations. I know some people are looking forward to that, so we'll do a little bit of that today, mocking authorisations. And there is a known issue at the moment I'm talking to the product team about, and they're working hard to resolve that. It's not a question, well, I suppose it is partly a question of fixing the problem, but actually the problem is just a symptom. The cause is a design decision that they want to make sure they get right. I'll explain more about that when we get to it. So it's all great. Lots of chat. Catching up with the chat. Digital scuba diving. Yes, I saw the ace pictures from that and from other sessions as well. Yes, terminal guys. Exactly. Thanks for that, Pete. So I'll finish my coffee. Let's get everything laid out here. Why don't we start then by having a look at this really simple problem. And if you've heard of Ramda, let me know in the live stream, and then I'll know how much to explain what it is. And if you all know what it is, then I don't need to explain, but I would like to introduce you to it. I think I've mentioned this chap on the live stream before. A guy called MPJ, Matthias Per Johansson. Fun function. I think Ronnie posted. Thanks, Robert. Yeah, thank you. I think Ronnie posted a link to MPJ's fun function YouTube series, which is amazing. And more recently, he's been exploring things using this observable website, which is a lot like the Jupyter notebooks that a lot of people use in the Python world, but there are also Jupyter notebooks for JavaScript. But this observable is from the guy that created D3, data-driven documents, I think it's called, isn't it? Awesome data visualization stuff. Anyway, we're not going to look at observable, but MPJ's been looking at observable and also looking at Ramda. But I would just want to look at Ramda sort of in the flesh, in the raw, and use it a tiny little bit to explore a tiny bit of functional programming, maybe that we haven't covered before. Thank you, Ronnie. You know what? When I mentioned that you'd sent the link before, I thought, you know what, Ronnie is so awesome, I'm sure he'll post it again. And you did. Thank you, Ronnie. That's really cool. So let me switch to the main channel, the main scene, though. Mike Bostock, yes. Data visualization god, indeed. So where are we? Okay, so let me open up a new window, bring it over here, and Project Euler, problem 6, I think it was. Yeah, again, in fact, I'm not going to apologize for the simplicity of this, but in many ways, it's great to have a simple problem. Oh, well, let's move that across there for a second into the center so we can see it over the under the chat. But it allows us to not think too much about the problem we're trying to solve and think a little bit more about the language and the way we express the solution. So let's read through it together, and then we'll start up a little project. I want to use NodeMon again. I really think that NodeMon is a great way to get immediate feedback, as is, of course, observable, as is also Quokka. So Quokka maybe will, the next time we do a brain teaser with JavaScript, we'll use Quokka, which is an extension for VS Code. Really nice sort of live feedback and sort of live evaluation of expressions as you type them. I think I might have mentioned Quokka before. In fact, let me just, here we go, Quokka introduction. So that's Quokka here. Let me just post the link to Quokka. So if you want, in the meantime, to be finding out about Quokka, you can do that. It's got support for VS Code, JetBeans, that's Atom, isn't it? And, oh, is that a new logo for Sublime Text? I guess it is. I don't know. So that's Quokka, anyway. Thank you. Yes, thanks, Robert. I'm sure I mentioned it. Yes. Anyway, so Project Euler is great if you just want to, just stretch your brain a little bit. And also, I use Project Euler a lot for when we do the kids coding stuff. So problem 6: the sum of the squares of the first 10 natural numbers is 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared, blah blah blah, equals 385. Yes, of course. Thank you. Yes, fun function on Quokka. So I know that MPJ has done more than one video using Quokka. I think maybe Quokka sponsored one of his videos. I can't remember. Anyway, and the square of the sum, so it's sort of almost like a reverse thing. The square of the sum of the first 10 natural numbers is 1 plus 2 plus 3 blah, blah, plus 10 squared equals 55 squared. The nice thing about these Project Euler problems is you get the base, not the base case, but a really simple example that you can use then to test whether your program works first of all. Then you turn it on the real problem, which is usually the same thing at a bigger scale. So it says here that the sum of 1 squared plus 2 squared, etc., plus 10 squared is 385, and the square of that range of numbers is 55 squared, which is 3025. What is the difference? The difference is 2640. So the real problem for us is to solve that for the first 100 natural numbers. So really, really simple, easy to understand problem. Let's have a look. So nobody has mentioned on the chat that they've heard of they've heard of Ramda before. I've just noticed what you also said, Volker, about your UI5Con session with a live CDS what? Is that CDS BE exclamation mark? Let me know what that means. CDS BE. Not sure what that means. Okay, thanks, Nabit. Okay, so, right. You know that I'm a big fan. Oh, backend. Sorry, of course, backend. Sorry, Volker, thank you. You know that I'm a fan of the functional programming approach to things. So Ramda is a library for JavaScript in the same way that, for example, underscore is a library for JavaScript, and there's Lodash as well, which is a slightly different flavor of underscore being a low dash, as it were. So Lodash is a clone of underscore and with all the bits and pieces. And Ramda is another library in that vein. Now you can use Ramda in the browser, but you can also use Ramda on the back end, on the BE, to use Volker's abbreviation. And it is probably the most extreme functional programming library that I've seen for JavaScript. And when I say extreme, I mean extreme in a good way, in that it takes the philosophy and approach of functional programming and, in my opinion and many other people's opinion, provides functions in the right way. If you've seen, and we've referenced this video before, and I'm sure Ronnie will be able to supply us with a link to the video again. What an awesome wingman you are, Ronnie. Thank you for that, for the URLs. There's a really good talk by Brian Lonsdorf called "Hey underscore, you're doing it wrong," and it's all about effectively the way that the positions of parameters in functions really matter if you want to do functional programming, quote unquote, properly, in that if you want to use the concepts of currying and point-free programming. So the way that underscore does it, it sort of gets in the way of doing that, but the way Ramda does it, it's a thing of beauty. So we'll have a look at that shortly. So have a look at Ramda. In fact, let me put the thank you, Ronnie. What an awesome chap you are. Thank you. So Ramda's really good. In order to use it, you can install it with npm in a project, which is what we'll do, and then you load it in. And the convention is to keep Ramda in the R constant, capital R. But of course, you can also use it directly in the browser here using a script element. It's got some great documentation, really nice documentation. Let's go for something we probably all know, which is map. So it'll tell us here. It has this sort of signature, which looks a bit scary, but actually I'm getting used to reading these and understanding what the hell they are. But it doesn't really matter, because all you really need to do is to look down at the examples here and see how it works. In fact, if we're not familiar with Ramda, then maybe we should do a little bit of a comparison first between how the Ramda map as an example function works and how the built-in map works. And yeah, they work they have the same effect, but they feel and work differently. So why don't we do that first? But let me just take you through Ramda as well. So it's also got a REPL, a read, evaluate, print loop. It's like the most beautiful thing ever, which is a command line conversational dial tone with the library. And the Ramda REPL is here. But actually, I'm going to click this. I'm not sure what's going to happen here, but open in REPL, and you will see that it's got those examples, and it immediately evaluates those examples and shows you the output. So this is, I think I may have used this in some tweets, because the really nice thing is that the code here in the input actually is encoded as part of the URL with URL encode. So you can send, if I send you that, for example, I'll copy that whole URL. I'm going to paste it into the chat. It's quite long, but it's because it contains the whole program. So you can sort of refer people to, this, I've tried this out, and look, this is what it is. And they can load that into their browser, and it has everything there, and it will evaluate automatically. The nice thing about the REPL is that Ramda is already built in. So actually, you don't need to use, within this REPL, you don't need to use the R object prefix. So you can just use map, and it will use, of course, all the Ramda functions. Okay, so there's a very, very brief overview of what Ramda is. I think one of the problems with Ramda that I find is, I'm just going to move my chair, is that its library of functions is so vast that sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming. If we have a look here, version 0.26.1, it's got a ton of functions, some of which may be familiar to us just by looking at the name. Others look a bit odd. For example, lift. Now, lift is from the functional programming world. We're not going to go into lift right now, but don't be overwhelmed with what Ramda offers. Just pick and choose. We'll just pick and choose a couple of things, and that's what we're going to do today. So going back to map, actually, what I want to do as well is to make sure, give me a shout. I only want to go until 1/2 with the Ramda, with the JavaScript stuff, solving this problem, and then we'll look at the latest version of CDS and CAP, and look at that. So if we take map as an example, and I'm going to move this across to, in fact, if I move that across to there and move that across to there, at least you can see that. I know my head's in the way and the chat's in the way, but I'll probably see that. Okay. If we, in fact, we'll do it in the REPL. So let's go back to map and open in REPL. So the way this works is that we're defining a function here. Is that big enough? There we go. In fact, by the way, if you also have it full screen, it will have the input on the left and the output on the right, but of course it'll nicely do the right thing from a responsive point of view. Really nice website. So we've got this double function, and the idea is that, in fact, we're going to do user range in a minute. We in many approaches to functional stuff, we often want to start with a list of numbers, with a range of numbers, and we talked about range before. Being a Python, or not being a Python, it's very popular in Python. Lambda has a range function. If I look for, let's make that a little bit bigger. There we go. So I can go to here, the range. Range, here we go. So it will return a list of numbers. So that's what we want. Okay. So if I say, for example, const numbers equals range starting at 1, ending at 4, which is the slightly higher one. And in fact, then what I'll do is I'll say numbers, and it will evaluate that, hopefully. There we go, 1, 2, 3. So that's the same as what we want here, r.map double, and then we'll just say here range, numbers. So the beautiful thing about that is that we can, the way that the random map works is that we can then define a new function called, for example, and this is a bit of a contrived example, double all the numbers is r.map. But what we've done is take away the second parameter, which is the input to the map. Okay, so the map basically applies a function to each of the items, each of the elements of an array, and returns that array, or it returns an array, a new array, with the results of the application of that function lifted into each of the items. So now what I've done is I've been able to create a new function with no arguments, with no parameters, and then I can say, for example, double all the numbers, and then pass it some value. So when we think about functional programming, we think about composing our solutions with small pieces. And a lot of that composition, and composition is a key word which we'll come to in a minute, a lot of that composition is all about composing functions. And you can't really compose functions when they're sort of in a state where they're about to operate on a set of parameters. So for example, in this example here, we're back into map. There we go here. In this example here, that's an actual, here it is, that's an actual expression that needs to be evaluated because the map function itself has been passed everything it needs to be evaluated. Whereas here, we're not passing map all the functions it's waiting for. It's waiting for, all the parameters it's waiting for. It needs two parameters. The function, which is the first parameter, and then the list of, and then the array, which is the second parameter. So we can, and in Lambda, all the functions out of the box are curried. Now, let me know in the chat if you want me to explain a little bit more what currying means. What basically currying means, being able to have a function that if you don't give it all its arguments, when you invoke it, when you execute it, or evaluate it, it will return you not the answer, because of course it can't, because I haven't given it all the arguments, but it will return you a function that's waiting for the arguments you haven't yet passed. It's a really odd concept to get your head around, first of all, but it's a beautiful thing once it clicks, and it allows us to, for example, build code that is effectively what's called point-free, data-free. So there's no data in this expression on line 3 here, but we're doing all sorts of really wonderful things and build. Anyway, I'm rambling here. So currying, it's not like a closure, but closures are super important when we're using currying. So maybe we'll do a live stream episode specifically on currying and closures. Yeah, exactly. So Nabi, you said right, like we did in previous section, waiting for all of them. Yeah, exactly. If we have a look at the way that the normal map works, first of all, we'll have an array, so constant more numbers equals 3, 4, 5. And then we can say, for example, more numbers dot map double. Okay, so that's the map that we're used to in JavaScript, because map is a function that's available on the array object, making the array object a functor, which is another word I wanted to sort of throw in there, but we'll leave that for another time. A functor is basically an object that has a map function, more or less. But anyway, the way that we can invoke map here is not in a way, is only in a way that we've already got some data. You know, we're basically calling map on some data. We can't sort of have map independently, really. So I hope that explains a little bit the difference between a proper functional flavored map function and a map function that's available in JavaScript. I mean, the map function in JavaScript is fantastic, and it allows us to think in terms of lists and think in terms of chains of functions that pass data through. Good morning, Nahesh. Nice to see you. Great to have you on board. So let's solve. Let's just jump back in and have a look at this. So why don't we use, for example, the map function right now and the range function to solve it for this sort of first 10 natural numbers first of all. Okay, so I'm going to leave this across on the left hand side. Wrong screen. On the left hand side, and I'll put this on the right hand side now, because what I'll do is I'll use NodeMon. So let's initialize a little project in this folder here. Okay, good. npm install as a development dependency node. Typing today is not very good. We'll install NodeMon, but we'll also install Ramda. And then we'll start editing an index.html, or even an index.js rather, to write our code, and we'll have NodeMon sort of execute that code when it changes. Perfect. So why don't we now, let's open up a new tmux window. And as you can see here, I've got this little, it reminds me, because I'm changing things all the time, it reminds me what version of Node I'm running, because I'm using nvm to manage different versions of Node. And sometimes I switch to the internal SAP Nexus-based bleeding edge release of the CDS package. So this is just to tell me what, this thing here is just to tell me what version of CDS I'm using. What is it called? Env-info. I wrote a little script. And I'm passing it through lolcat, which makes it really nice. Okay, so we'll say here NodeMon. But before we do that, let's go here and create, we also want to install Ramda, don't we? npm install Ramda. Perfect. Okay, so NodeMon here. We don't need to give it any parameters because it's going to look for an index.js and, it's going to look for an index.js and rerun or restart when it sees changes in any sort of JS file, I think. But NodeMon isn't available as an executable. It's only available in the node modules.bin directory. But there it is there. But my colleague Marius Obert, who's running a cat code jam today along with another colleague of mine, Max Schreifeneder, and you've seen both of these chaps on the Hands-on SAP Dev live stream in the past. They're running a code jam in Passau in Germany today. So hi Max, hi Marius. Marius told me about npx, which is part of the, the node npm install, which says basically I'm going to look for executables in this .bin directory, effectively. So we can say npx NodeMon. I mean, if I'd have installed NodeMon globally, then I could have, of course, run NodeMon directly. It would have found it in my path. So npx NodeMon, there we go. So we're running that now. So let's switch back up to the top and start editing index.js. If I say console.log hello world, and save that. There we go. We get the output down here. So you know we're all set up. I know it's 8:30. Let's just spend 5 more minutes. npm init. Ah yes, Ronnie, excellent. npm init minus y says yes to all the things. Yes, say yes to all the things. That's a new phrase. Thanks, Ronnie. I always forget that. So now let's say const r equals require lambda. Perfect. And we'll say const naturals equals r dot range 1 to 11, and then console.log out naturals. Perfect. Okay, we've got 1 to 10 there. What we want to do is the square of the first, sum of the squares of the first 10 natural numbers. So we'll use map. So console.log, in fact, let's use the same one, r.map, but why don't we say square, small things loosely joined, const square is a function that takes something and returns that something multiplied by itself. There we go, there's a nice definition of square. And we're going to map that function over the naturals. Okay, so there we go. But what we really want to do is we want to say r dot sum. Okay, we want to add them all together. So r dot sum will take, is that sum? There we go, yeah, r dot sum, r dot map. So we're sort of nesting calls to functions. And we can see 385 here. There we go, 385. Given the time, it's not much point solving this problem entirely. But what I want to do is just talk a little bit about, why do I always go over time? There's always too much to talk about. But what we'll do instead is I want to introduce you to this idea of composing functions together, not in this sort of nested sort of call way, but using a compose function. So why don't we say, console.log r.compose, and you pass compose a series of functions that are waiting for their arguments, and then compose will call the first function, which is the rightmost one, then call the second the second rightmost one on the results of that, and so on and so on and so on. There's also an equivalent that goes from left to right, which is pipe. So look at the pipe function, look at the compose function. So if we say, for example, r.sum, comma, okay, all we're doing is passing actually the function definition. We're not passing any data here, we're sort of point free in a way, and r.map square. So in fact, why don't we say here, const sum of squares equals, yeah, let's do that. So we've now defined a function that does exactly what this first thing is asking us about here, which is the sum of the squares. And note that we're not using any data in that whatsoever. So now we can say console.log sum of squares 385. So yeah, I'll leave that there. It wasn't about solving this problem, but I just wanted you to sort of have a feel of what it's like to think in terms of functions first, and also think in terms of point free, i.e. we are not providing any data whatsoever when we're composing these two functions together. And even the sort of the individual functions that we're composing together, they are using other functions. Okay, so we're passing a parameter, we're not passing any data, but we're passing a function to map, but we're not passing all the arguments that map is requiring. Okay, so anyway, right. I think we've probably warmed up enough. Sorry, I've just hit the microphone. I know I've had some feedback on feedback. See what I did there? Feedback on being careful with the microphone. I'll put my water over here. instead. Let me know if you want to solve this to the end, but I'm going to guess we don't want to solve this. It was more about looking at Ramda and getting a feel as to what it can or how it can help you think. So instead, why don't we look at turn our attention to CAP and CDS. We'll generate a classic new project, the bookshop project. I've got the CSV data. We'll fire it up, but then we'll look at a couple of things. Hopefully, we'll look at authorizations and mocking authorizations. And I've noticed that, and I don't know whether it's just me, but I noticed, and tell me if you have as well, that you get some built-in Fiori element goodness as well. Has anybody else noticed that? So let's finish that and kill that. And let's start a project. So CDS init, modules, db serve as usual. And why not call it bookshop again? So Nappy, you're wondering how I might use Ramda somewhere else. I know how to tell a story. Well, thank you. I think that's, yes, thank you. I'll say thank you to that. I like to be able to learn things and then use those things together. And of course, I'm not learning random things and trying to squish them together when they don't go. But of course, Ramda, I've used Ramda in projects in the past, in UI5 projects actually. But yeah, let's see where we might use Ramda. And even let's see where we might use the philosophies that Ramda allows us to think more strongly about in terms of functional programming. In functional programming, let's see where we can use those. So anyway, okay, we've got the bookshop. See the bookshop, and it's the usual, our usual suspect files here. We've got the data model, and we've got a catalog service, and that's it. Why don't we load it in? Make the db CSV and then copy. Let's see, I've got it in store somewhere. Here we go. Store my.bookshop authors. Yep, there we go to db CSV. There we go. So we've got the CSV files. That's fine. And I think what we need to do is add the authors. And I like to go through. I don't know about you. Let me know whether you feel this. Hey, Sachin, welcome. Good afternoon to you, sir. I'm guessing if you know Napheat, I'm guessing you might be in the same time zone roughly as Napheat. So welcome. You're more than welcome. Great to see you. I hope you can come back next time as well. We're just looking at the latest version of CDS, of the CAP CDS command line, and I'm going to add. And yeah, what I was saying was I like to. It's almost like a Zen meditation to go through the same process each time. I could have a zip file and unzip it and everything's already done there, but I like to feel stuff under my fingers. So I'm gonna edit the cat service. Well, no, I'm going to edit the data model first of all to add the authors entity. By the way, if you're wondering, I've again been customizing my setup, and I'm using FZF or FZF Fuzzy Finder, which is an amazing utility generally on the command line, but there's also a Vim plugin that uses Fuzzy Finder and binds in Fuzzy Finder FZF into various Vim things. And I've bound that to my Control P in Vim, which I used to use to invoke, it wasn't Nerd Tree, it was some other plugin that worked a little bit like Fuzzy Finder. Anyway, FZF, have a look at that, by an amazing person called June Gunn, who writes all sorts of cool stuff. So yes, there we go. So I'll add entity, and I'm also want to sort of practice using my Vim plugin for CDS, using the CDS LSP. So entity authors. In fact, let's have this here, author, association to authors, and we'll have key ID, integer, and name. We'll just have a name, string, and books. And of course, this mantra helps me remember that association to many books on. And how is this on relationship? How does it work? It's on this property here, on books, but this property refers to the books entity. So that's why I've got here effectively the 4 properties of the books entity to choose from. And of course, on books.author equals self, me. Okay, so that's nice, and we'll just close that, and we've got no more errors. So that's all we need. Yeah, bottom-up programming, yes. John, hey, welcome. John, have you versed in line numbers? Okay, so the line numbers I'm using, and it's quite common for Vim users to do this. I've got line numbers in there, of course, and the current line is always showing the actual line number, but this is called relative line numbers. So the line with the entity definition here is 5 lines down. So if I want to move 5 lines down, of course, in Vim, you can say 5J. So if I want to move up to entity, it's very easy to meet up here for me to look at number 7 and say 7 up, 7K. So that's what that is. So anyway, we've got that, and we'll say now CDS deploy, because I think, oh no, well might as well edit the service as well, cat service, and let's get rid of the read only and authors. Does my plugin still work in terms of go to definition? Oh no, it doesn't. Well, I'll fix that later. Okay, good. Now CDS deploy. Notice that the message is slightly different, slightly more helpful. But there we go. So we got the stuff deployed, CDS run, and in fact, let's open that there, but also let's just open up this thing here. CDS run. Have I forgotten anything? I don't know. Let's just open localhost. Let's go here, get rid of that, and that, and that. There we go. So that's all fine. Let's look at books. We've got the books. That's cool. It's a bit small, but is the right 100%. But what we've also got here is this in Fiori. Has anybody else seen that before? I think this is new with 3.13, right? So if we click on in Fiori, we get taken to a really interesting URL, which it clearly looks like a built-in service, $Fiori preview, and then we pass it a couple of query parameters, what service and what entity within that service. Yeah, it's really nice. It's really nice, but of course we have to supply, so let's make that a little bit smaller. We have to supply what do we have to supply to make this work? We have to supply some annotations. So it's using an object list, of course. The really interesting thing is that I'm pretty sure in the books, VI, let's look here, in the, oh no, we're in the wrong, bookshop, there we go, we're in the wrong place. If we look in the CSV file for books, we have 8. Okay, well 7 because the top one is the CSV header. So we've got 7 books, and lo and behold, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And in terms of authors, we have 5 authors. 1 second, just trying to find out what's going on. Are you going up to the home now? Okay, all right. Sorry about that. So we've got 5 here, and I think if we go back, well, in fact, why don't you just hack the URL authors? I'm guessing that works. Yeah, we got 5. Okay, so this is really cool. Well, semi-cool. Maybe we'll add some annotations. Well, we will add some annotations. But before we do that, I need some water. Before we do that, we'll have a quick look at authorizations and how we can start to play around with mocking authorizations and understanding roles and scopes and things. There's this NPM module called Passport, which is not from SAP. If I say NPM Passport. By the way, maybe at least Srikanth will be interested, maybe Volker and other people. I'm using Vimium, which is a plugin for Vim, which allows me to use keyboard shortcuts. So quite often I turn off, this is like a Bluetooth mouse or whatever, with a button to turn it off, to save battery. I quite often turn it off to force myself to use a keyboard. But the Vimium allows me, for example, to hit F and then AH to go to this link here, AH. It's a really good way of navigating navigating Chrome pages in Chrome with Vim plugins. With Vim keyboard shortcuts, so like J down and K up, or D for half down and up and everything. So Passport is Express compatible authentication middleware. Okay, that's all we're going to say about Passport for now. The CAP team have built into the CDS Node.js mechanism, core mechanism, support for using Passport to mock authentications. I'm just going to talk about mocking authentications today. We'll move into how authentications work in Cloud Foundry with roles and everything, maybe in the next one, next episode. So what we need to do is provide some configuration, and let's just do that configuration now. Let's go across here, and in fact, let's just keep that running for now. Let's quit out of there, and one place we can put configuration, of course, as you've seen here, we've got a CDS SRC, where is it? CDS SRC file, in fact. There it is, there, CDS SRC. Let's make that a bit bigger. Yeah, CDS SRC. In the same way that you have a .something RC file, which is like a run command file, it's a sort of basic configuration, and it's the bottom of a series of layered, like cascading configuration possibilities. So let's stick it in there. We'll stick it in there for now. Let's go and edit that. And there's this new stanza that you can create called an auth stanza. Oops. Which has the following: Passport. I've got this written down. I'm not remembering this. I've got this written down, but I want to sort of type it in as we go. Just so that we get a feel for what it is, because otherwise you stare at JSON sometimes and it doesn't really soak in at all. So the strategy is the mock strategy, okay, and then all you have to do is specify your users in the form of a map object, right? The proper word for an object, a map. So we're going to have, for example, well, let's have. Who was the last people? Yes, right, Volker, this is what we talked about earlier. Perfect, this is what you investigated with 313 as opposed to 310. If you're going to do deep inserts, we need to change association to composition. Maybe we'll look at that as well in another live stream. What compositions are, what associations are, like dig in a little bit more, and maybe have a version of 310 CDS and a version of 313 CDS and see the difference. Let me know in the live stream if that would be an interesting thing to do. I think it would, but let me know. So we're going to define, for example, let's define Volker as one user, and we have for each user you define a password. Let's say dive, and we also define an ID, Volker at _C. I'm just making this up, obviously, and we can supply a list of roles. So roles here is an array of, and the basic one is authenticated user. And for now, we need this OpenID thing. Now, this will disappear because this is like almost like an implementation detail that these CAP team are trying to get rid of, because you don't really need OpenID. You don't need to want to specify. You don't want to need to specify this, but we need that for now. And we'll also we'll also define another user. And so Ronnie was also the last person to speak as well. So Ronnie, and let's do the same sort of thing here. And let's just get rid of that. And just close this off before I forget. And auth, there we go. Let's go give Ronnie a password. What's your password, Ronnie? Why don't we say, I don't know, sit Oslo. There's a bit of advert there. And Ronnie at sit Oslo. And we'll give Ronnie an extra role, okay, which will map to a scope. The URL king, yes, exactly, the URL king. We'll give Ronnie an extra role admin. Okay, so now what we can do, or know what we can, let's do that. Let's go up here. Let's go into server and let's create. In fact, let's copy the cat service and call it. Let's change the name. Change the name to admin service.cds and go in here and just for the hell of it, let's just have one entity and then let's call it admin service. But we can say requires. Now hold on. Is it? Oh, what was the annotation? I've got it here somewhere. One second. Where is it? Let's go across here and have a look. Temp x serve admin in service. Oh yes, that's right. Oh yeah, got the syntax wrong. There we go. Requires. Whoop, requires admin. There we go. All the annotations, my brain doesn't work properly yet with the annotation syntax. So we're now saying that in order to enjoy the admin service that's served from this CDS project, we need admin privileges. Okay, so let's do that. Let me get rid of that one here. There we go, perfect. Mark, you were part of the first SAP Inside Track Oslo. Great experience. I didn't think there was one before that. Was there a previous Inside Track Oslo? Odd. Okay, well, I'm sure Ronnie will let us know. So we've got this authorization here, or the admin role required for the admin service. So now, what do we need to do? We just need to run it. So why don't we do that? Let's quit out of here. Let's go back to here and run it. And cannot find module passport. Of course, npm install. Let's make that a bit bigger. Npm install for development only passport. There we go. This is all. I'm not making this. I've not planned this. Okay, perfect. Let's run it. So now we've got these two services, and let's just have a look in the browser. Let's go back here. There we go, perfect. So, but instead of using the browser and then getting mixed up with cookies and sessions and everything, why don't we use curl, because then we know exactly what we're doing. And of course, curl's command line, so it's proper. The previous one was in 2014. Of course. So now, what was /admin? Okay, so it removes the service word /admin. So why don't we say admin authors? So here we go. Curl. Well, let's do the. Let's use no authentication first of all. Let's go verbose. Admin authors. Okay, yeah, that's it. Admin authors. Right, okay, so we get unauthorized. So let's just go through this very quickly. We also see here a little bit of debugging, which is quite useful for us. So when you run the -v verbose, you get messages from curl itself in the asterisks. these greater than signs are basically signifying what is being sent in the request, and then the less than signs is what's coming back in the response, which is a really nice way of expressing that. So we can see here we send a GET request to this URL at this host, etc., etc., and we get a 401 unauthorized, which is not the same as a 403. 401 as in you need to authenticate yourself, and the realm of that authentication requirement is this user's realm, whatever that means. But yeah, when you get a 401 back, what you're also expected to see is this www authenticate header in the response. So now, I can't remember the names and passwords. Oh yeah, Volker and Dive and Ronnie and Sid. So now, why don't we add Volker Dive? So you can supply on the command line, of course, because for debugging purposes, there's all sorts of things you can do with curl. But you can supply user ID, :password on the command line with -u. Let's see what happens there. Now, see, we've authenticated, so we don't get a 401. So server auth using basic user with user Volker, and we send this authorization, which of course is base 64 encoded. So it's encoded, not encrypted. That's why basic authentication is only secure when it goes over HTTPS. But what we get is a 403 forbidden, because yes, we've sort of, we recognize the fact that you've authenticated yourself, but you, Volker, are not coming in. Notice the user here that's been identified is not the user name that we sent, but the actual user ID. Oops, the user ID, where is it? The user ID, cat CDS, so I'm trying to be more haste, less speed. The user ID that we have in that little stanza there. So now I would try Ronnie. Ronnie sit Oslo. Well, actually, let's try a bad password first. Yeah, we get unauthorized. Okay, you've not authenticated yourself. So you get a 401 again. So let's try that again with a good password, which was what, sit Oslo, wasn't it? Ooh, no such table. Of course, yeah. So that's good though, right? Because we've successfully authenticated ourselves and identified ourselves as Ronnie. The passport mocking, or the passport-based authentication mocking mechanism, knows that Ronnie has story of your life. Yes, exactly. The internal server. Oh, I've got an idea for a new T-shirt, another T-shirt now. Internal server error. How about that one? But I quite like this one. We get an error, but we get an error because it's trying to give Ronnie what he wants and what he is allowed to have, which is the authors. But of course, what did we not do? What we didn't do after we added that stuff, the authors entity exposed to the new admin service, we didn't do a CDS deploy, did we? So the admin service table tables are not there. In fact, if we say SQLite bookshop DB tables, yeah, we've only got the catalog service, authors and books views, which represent the two entities in the service, and of course we've got the bookshop data there. So why don't we say now quit CDS deploy. Now, it wouldn't be also cool if, well, maybe we'll do this next time as well, we use nodemon to automatically restart when we change CDS files and automatically redeploy and restart. So we'll deploy and CDS run. So hopefully when we go across here and do that again with the correct password, it works. Okay. So there's a really super quick, 8:59, super quick overview of what the sort of thing you can do with mocking authorizations. I'll leave it till the next time to explain what is still outstanding in this mocking mechanism, but hopefully that will give you at least a little bit of stuff to play with, to go at, to understand, for this in 1 minute now, to understand for the next time. So Thank you all so much for joining. I really appreciate you joining and making it really interesting by chatting on this stuff. Hopefully that was okay. A bit of a limber up with, we looked at Quokka very briefly, we looked at Ramda, we looked at functional programming, we looked at Compose, we looked at point-free programming. Napit, if you want to do some currying stuff and closures, we'll do that. And of course, we'll carry on with this authorization stuff. We'll leave the annotations, of course, to next time as well. We'll do that really nice and slowly and enjoy building that up bit by bit. So those Fiori element-based built-in things will look beautiful. Okay, until next time, thanks so much for joining. Have a great weekend, and I shall see you again online soon. Bye.